My name is Greta, and I am 30 years old. I went pale the second I saw it. It was just past midnight, and I was sitting in the hospital break room, halfway through a protein bar I didn't even want, scrolling Facebook while I waited for a late lab result to come in. My back ached, my legs burned, and I still had one more patient to check on before I could go home. I was drained, but when that photo loaded, I sat up like someone had poured ice down my spine. There they were, my mom, my dad, my sister Madison, and some guy in board shorts holding a beer, all of them sun-kissed and relaxed on a balcony overlooking a glowing Hawaiian sunset, palm trees, ocean, that specific soft gold light people pay thousands of dollars to stand inside, and my mother's caption sat under it like a blade. Finally, a vacation with people who matter. No emoji, no explanation, just that. I stared at the screen long enough that my thumb went numb. The wording hit harder than I expected because it wasn't vague, it wasn't accidental. It was a statement. People who matter. I wasn't tagged, I wasn't mentioned. It was like I didn't exist, like they were announcing their freedom from the heaviest thing in their lives, and that thing was me. I tapped the photo and zoomed in, not because I wanted to torture myself, but because my brain needed to make sense of what it was seeing. The background snapped into focus immediately. The balcony rails, the angle of the ocean, the line of palms below. I recognized it from months ago, from the brochures I'd saved when I was planning my own dream trip and then talked myself out of it because it felt irresponsible. Kona Reef Resort. I had stared at that exact view on my phone until my eyes blurred, telling myself maybe one day, when I wasn't working double shifts, when I wasn't patching everyone else's emergencies. I hadn't booked it because I couldn't afford it. But somehow they had. My stomach dropped so fast I felt nauseous. I didn't scroll further. I didn't read comments. I didn't do the normal thing. The thing people do when they're trying to preserve denial, where they message gently and ask if everything is okay. I switched straight to my banking app, because deep down, I already knew what I was going to find. The emergency credit card was at the top of my linked accounts. It was supposed to be inactive. I kept it open for one reason only, because my dad had a health scare a few years ago, and I didn't want them stranded if something happened again. I never removed their access. I told myself it was safety. I told myself it was love. The charges were stacked like a confession. 4,100, 3,200, 5,100. Then more, spa, restaurant, ocean excursions, an adventure company I'd never heard of. All within 3 days. All under my name. The total sat at the bottom in a number that didn't feel real. 12,400 and change. I wasn't furious yet. I was stunned. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't fraud from a stranger. They hadn't been hacked. They had booked a luxury resort vacation, flown there, spent over $12,000 on my emergency card, and then posted a photo implying I didn't matter. And they expected me to stay quiet. I didn't call. I didn't comment. I didn't give them the chance to start shaping the story while I was still shaking. I opened the credit card app, hit dispute on every charge, froze the account, and flagged it with the fraud department. The card was dead now. At least they wouldn't be able to keep spending. At 6:03 a.m., my phone lit up. Madison. I let it ring. She called again, and again, and again. By the fourth call, I answered, not to hear excuses and not to let her explain. I said one sentence, calm enough to sound cruel. When you land, you'll be getting served. Then I hung up. They landed 3 days later into a storm they hadn't prepared for, and the worst part was they still thought they could talk their way out of it. I didn't need to be in the same room to feel the panic radiating off them. It came in waves through my phone, through the sudden silence from people who normally ignored me, through the way my mother's online presence started shifting, like she was trying to erase history with her fingertips. The first sign was small but obvious. The comments under her vacation post vanished overnight. I had seen them earlier, people laughing, friends writing things like, "You deserve it," and "so happy for you," someone even asking where they were staying. By 2 a.m. on Tuesday, those comments were gone, wiped clean, and the caption had changed. Finally, a vacation with people who matter was replaced by 3 flower emojis, as if reducing it to something harmless would undo the intent. It didn't. The morning after I saw the charges, I met with a lawyer. I didn't hesitate. I didn't sit in my apartment thinking about how it would look. I didn't draft a long emotional message asking my mother to explain herself. I walked into a downtown office still wearing scrubs under my coat and laid it all out. The card, the resort, the photo, the total. My lawyer didn't blink. She told me it was unauthorized use of funds, breach of financial trust, potential fraud. She said she had seen cases like this before, not often with parents, but often enough to know exactly how it would go. That made it easier practically, even if emotionally it felt like I was watching my life from outside my body. We filed fast. Not theatrical, not vengeful, just precise. When my family touched down, sunburned and jet-lagged, they walked up to their front door and found a manila envelope sitting there like a welcome home gift they couldn't Instagram. Notarized, filed, delivered. Inside was a civil suit naming my parents and, for formality, Madison. It wasn't because I thought she physically swiped the card. It was because she was on that balcony, smiling in the sunset, benefiting from the theft like it was normal. My phone didn't stop buzzing for 48 hours. Madison came first, like she always did when there was fallout. She texted, "Hey, can we talk?" 4 times before she started calling. Then she switched strategies, claiming she didn't know the card was mine, that she thought our parents had saved up. I didn't reply. I didn't open the door when she showed up outside my building either. I saw her through the peephole, pacing, typing something she never sent. She stood there for 10 minutes like she thought my silence was temporary. Then she left. My mother called next, but she didn't leave voicemails. Instead, she sent walls of text, paragraphs stacked on top of each other, like if she overwhelmed me with emotion, I would crumble. She said she couldn't believe I'd betray family like this. Betray. That word nearly made me laugh, sharp and humorless, because for years I had been the one keeping them afloat. I paid the last chunk of Madison's tuition when my mother forgot the due date. I covered their property taxes the year my father couldn't find the envelope. I forgave it each time because I wanted to believe they were trying. Now I knew better. They weren't trying. They were counting on me being too tired and too loyal to say no. By day 3, their lawyer reached out by email, polite and professional, asking what it would take to make this go away. I responded with a number, not an emotion. $12,426.37, plus court fees and filing costs. Certified check only. No payment plans, no favors, no apologies that dissolved into excuses. They declined. An hour later, my father called. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened later, he sounded offended, more than afraid. He said this was insanity, that I was ripping the family apart over some vacation. He said it like I was the problem, like they hadn't lied, stolen, and flaunted it publicly with that caption. Like they weren't counting on me keeping my mouth shut the way I always had. My mother texted again, shorter this time, like she was trying a sharper blade. This will destroy the family. She was wrong. The family wasn't destroyed when I filed the suit. It was destroyed the moment they decided to use me, then posted about it like I didn't exist. There was a time not long ago when I might have caved just to avoid the mess, the guilt, the drama. But not anymore. That version of me was gone, and they didn't even realize they were the ones who killed her somewhere between the spa treatments and the sunset photo. 6 days passed. 6 days of silence from me and chaos from them. Extended relatives surfaced like they always do when family secrets go public. An uncle I hadn't spoken to in months messaged me saying he was sure it was just a misunderstanding and that I should talk to my mom because I'd always been level-headed. As if talking was the issue, not theft and humiliation and entitlement. The court deadline came and went. They hadn't filed an answer, so my attorney prepared to proceed by default. 2 days later, their lawyer asked for an extension. I agreed strategically. The longer this dragged, the more real it became for them. That same day, Madison stopped texting and started knocking. Madison didn't knock once. She knocked over and over, steady and insistent, like persistence could wear me down the way it always had. I stood in the hallway just out of sight, listening to her say my name softly, not crying, not yelling, just repeating it like a plea she thought I couldn't ignore. After 5 minutes, the knocking stopped. A folded piece of paper slid under the door. I didn't know. I really didn't, it read, followed by, "They're panicking. Please." I didn't pick it up right away. I let it sit there like a test I had already passed. I sent one final formal message to their lawyer that afternoon. I listed the exact amount again, $12,426. $26.37, attached documentation of every transaction, and made it clear that upon receipt of a certified check for the full amount, I would withdraw the lawsuit. No payment plans, no discounts, no apologies required. I didn't want words, I wanted what they took. 2 days later, a white envelope appeared at my door, hand-delivered, no postage. My dad's handwriting was across the front, uneven and rushed, like he hadn't wanted to slow down long enough to think. Inside was a certified check for the full amount, exact to the cent. Behind it was a handwritten letter in blue ink that felt more like an afterthought than a confession. It said they didn't want this to go any further, that they were sorry it got out of hand, that we were still family, and that we should talk. That last line stayed with me longer than the rest. We're still your family. Like the check erased everything. Like money was the bandage that closed the wound. Like they hadn't posted a caption erasing me from existence or quietly drained my emergency reserves expecting forgiveness to show up on schedule. I deposited the check the same day. Then I called my lawyer and withdrew the claim. On paper, it was done. Legally clean. Financially resolved. Emotionally, nothing was fixed. I didn't text anyone. I didn't say thank you. I didn't explain. Silence had become my language, and they didn't know how to speak it. They tried anyway. My dad sent an email with the subject line, "We love you." The body of it was a list of reasons they felt comfortable using the card. How I had always helped before. How they assumed I would understand. How it wasn't meant to hurt me. It wasn't an apology. It was a defense. Madison sent a voice memo saying she was relieved it was over and hoped we could put it behind us because we were lucky to still have each other. Lucky. The word felt hollow, like a souvenir bought at the airport on the way out. I never replied, and that's when they decided to punish me. The letter arrived on heavy cardstock from an address I recognized instantly, the family business. My grandfather's company, the one my dad had inherited and turned into a local contracting powerhouse. The one I had quietly kept running more than once when things got messy. The letter was cold and formal, informing me that I was no longer affiliated with any financial or administrative operations of the firm and that my access to internal systems had been revoked. They even changed the QuickBooks password. It shouldn't have hurt. I never had a title there. But it did, because it confirmed what the check hadn't fixed. They weren't sorry. They were angry that I didn't stay obedient. Then the real blow landed. 2 years earlier, I had made a modest investment into the company's expansion, $11,000, transferred quietly to help them expand equipment inventory. There was no formal contract. That was my mistake. There were emails, bank transfers, and years of financial statements showing my involvement. I was due a modest payout that spring. Instead, it vanished. No deposit, no explanation. When I followed up, the office manager replied with a single sentence saying my investment had been reconsidered as a personal contribution and that the board saw no remaining balance owed. I sat at my kitchen table staring at that email, feeling something settle into place. This wasn't clumsiness. This wasn't miscommunication. They were rewriting history in real time, erasing my contributions the same way they erased me from that balcony caption. For a moment, I wondered if it was even worth the fight. They had already taken so much. Maybe walking away would be easier. Then my phone buzzed with a message I didn't expect. A former employee reached out on LinkedIn, someone who had left the company the year before under strange circumstances. He said he'd heard what happened and that he had something I might want to see. We met for coffee that weekend. He brought a flash drive. Inside were internal emails, conversations between my dad and his business partner about making my role look unofficial on paper and stripping me from distributions if things ever went legal. It wasn't messy. It was deliberate. Then I saw the email that ended any doubt. It was from my dad, dated 5 months before the vacation. "I know Greta's got savings, but she's tight. We'll book the trip and sort it out later. She'll forgive us like always." That was it. Proof of intent. Proof of manipulation. Proof that the vacation wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was a plan. I forwarded everything to my attorney that night and made a decision that felt calm, not angry. I wasn't just letting them keep what they owed me. I was going after all of it. It took my attorney 2 days to sort through everything from the flash drive, and when she called me back, her voice sounded different, sharper, focused, the kind of tone that tells you the ground has shifted. She said what I already knew, but needed to hear out loud. This wasn't just a family dispute. This wasn't even just theft. It was documented financial misrepresentation, deliberate alteration of records, and retaliatory action designed to deny me rightful compensation. Fraud. And we could prove it. Hearing the word didn't feel triumphant. It felt clarifying. We filed the new claim that week. $15,000 for the unpaid investment, plus $65,000 in damages for breach of verbal agreement, fraudulent misrepresentation, and bad faith retaliation. $80,000 total. This time, there were no softened edges, no space for misunderstanding. The papers landed at their office on a Wednesday morning. By 3 o'clock, my phone started lighting up again. My mother called first, not crying this time, not indignant either, panicked. She left a voicemail asking what I thought I was doing, warning me that this would crush the business. My father followed with his own message, voice tight, finally stripped of authority. He said we'd already settled this, that they paid me back, that I didn't need to ruin them. It was the first time he sounded afraid, and the sound surprised me. I didn't reply. I forwarded everything to my attorney. The next week was a scramble on their end. Emails from their lawyer asking to talk. 2 settlement offers came in. $20,000, then $40,000. Both were rejected. I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't negotiating. I was collecting what they had decided didn't belong to me anymore. 3 days before the scheduled hearing, another envelope arrived. No note this time, just a certified check for the full amount. $80,000 exact. Silence where apologies should have been. I deposited it the next morning. My attorney confirmed the dismissal. The matter was considered fully resolved, legally. Emotionally, nothing about it felt resolved. The trust was gone. The family ties weren't frayed, they were severed. I waited a few days, not because I expected anything, but because some stubborn part of me still believed they might try. A call, an explanation, something human. Nothing came, just quiet. And in that quiet, I realized how much peace felt like absence at first. A week later, a cousin sent me a screenshot of my father's Facebook post, something vague about loyalty not meaning much these days, about wounds that don't come from strangers. 6 likes, a handful of pity comments. I didn't engage. By then, my head was already somewhere else. I moved apartments quietly into a smaller place closer to the hospital. Less space, fewer echoes. I stopped taking extra shifts. I booked a weekend trip to Seattle, my first real vacation in years, paid for with my own money on my own time. It wasn't Hawaii, but it was mine, and the ownership of that mattered more than the destination. 2 months later, a letter arrived from the family business again. This one was formal, signed by the board, inviting me to a reconciliation meeting to discuss the potential for future cooperation. Translation was easy. The hit they took hadn't killed them, but it rattled them badly. Clients noticed. Vendors got nervous. Old partnerships started pulling back. They wanted me back in some capacity, wanted my knowledge, my systems, my quiet competence to stabilize what they had shaken. I let the letter sit for a week. Then I wrote one of my own, 1 page, polite, final. I thanked them for the invitation and declined. I told them I had no interest in returning now or ever, that I hoped the business survived, but it would not be with my help. I mailed it back in their envelope. That should have been the end. 3 quiet weeks followed, and for the first time in years, my phone wasn't buzzing with drama. I slept better. I worked less. I felt like my life belonged to me again. Then an email landed in my other folder, buried between spam and expired promo codes. The subject line read, "Please read this. It's about the company." The sender was Nicole R. She used to be my dad's assistant, quiet, meticulous, loyal to a fault. She'd left about a year earlier under vague circumstances no one explained. Her message was short and direct. She said she knew about the lawsuit and that she had something I needed to see. She asked for 1 meeting. After that, she'd disappear. I didn't know whether to trust it, but Nicole wasn't dramatic. She didn't play games. We met at a small cafe in Echo Park. She was already there, a manila folder on the table between us like a prop from a low-budget legal drama. She didn't waste time. She slid the folder toward me and said she'd been told to shred it before she left, and she hadn't. Inside were internal memos, spreadsheets, old email printouts, photocopies of financial transfers. I scanned them slowly, then froze. My name was tied to an account I didn't recognize, a secondary investment fund under the company's development arm. 2 years ago, I'd given them $11,000 to help expand equipment inventory. They told me I'd see a modest return once rentals picked up. What Nicole brought showed something else entirely. The account hadn't just grown, it had ballooned. Through contracts and subcontractor deals, it had quietly accumulated over $45,000 in profit. My name appeared in the initial filing, then vanished from every quarterly report after that. They didn't dissolve the account. They rewrote the ownership structure and kept collecting. They knew you wouldn't dig, Nicole said. You never questioned them. They counted on that. She handed me a flash drive. Everything was on it. Emails, reports. She told me she'd confronted my dad when she saw him signing off on the transfers. He told her to stay out of family business. Then she was encouraged to resign. This was never just about a vacation, she said. That was the part they couldn't hide. They're still doing it. She stood, pushed her empty cup aside, and left without waiting for my reaction. I spent 3 hours that night going through the flash drive, my living room lit only by my laptop screen. There were 3 separate accounts tied to my contributions, each scrubbed clean of my name after the initial deposits. Worse, there were notes about doing the same thing to another cousin, someone they assumed would also stay quiet. This wasn't a mistake, it was a system. By the time the sun came up, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I was clear. With my attorney, I escalated. We prepared evidence packages, documented timelines, and moved beyond civil recovery into formal reporting. I protected my accounts, locked down my credit, and braced for retaliation. It came, predictably, in the form of character attacks and whispered narratives about me being vindictive, unstable, ungrateful. None of it stuck. Paper speaks louder than stories. Vendors asked questions. Partners paused. Audits followed. The business didn't collapse overnight, but it cracked. People get nervous when patterns surface. I rejected another reconciliation request without reading it. Family members reached out, some angry, some pleading. I didn't engage. This wasn't about punishment. It was about stopping a machine that ran on silence. Months later, when the noise finally died down, I realized something simple. I had my life back. Not just my money, not just my time, but my autonomy. I wasn't the family safety net anymore. I wasn't the quiet fixer. I was the person who said no and meant it. I don't call myself vindictive. I call myself finished. Finished pretending that blood excuses theft. Finished absorbing guilt that never belonged to me. Finished shrinking so others could stay comfortable. The vacation photo started it, but it didn't define the end. The end came when I stopped negotiating my worth. And that, finally, was enough.